Hello and welcome to Politics Today. Well, there's only one story that we can discuss, and that's the coronavirus that's affecting all of our lives. It's now a global pandemic, and we'll be asking how should the government respond to this deadly virus? So in today's programme, I'm joined by Benson, who's a Christian political commentator, as well as Melanie Simmonds, the editor of Heart newspaper. I'll start off with you, Melanie, because you're very much on the pulse of things, and you bring a kind of journalistic perspective to what we're facing now. The problem is we're recording this programme today on Thursday, the 12th of March, and regarding the coronavirus, we are seeing news events and this virus develop so quickly that we will often be out of date. So this is why I'm kind of dating this programme now. So when I look at the kind of general overview of the impact that the coronavirus is having on our country and also across the globe as well. But from your perspective, how is the coronavirus changing our politics, but also our society?
It's a big question. I think there's a lot going on underneath that we're not told about. And I've only learned in the last 24 hours about the theory that it's germ warfare, and it's an escaped virus which was being made by the Canadians, which the Chinese stole from a laboratory, and they've got their BSL-4 top germ warfare laboratory in Wuhan. And also that it wasn't in a seafood market because the first case, 01 or something, he hadn't been to the seafood market. In terms of changing our politics, it is very interesting because there are things which go on, as I said, underneath, and there's possibly a geopolitical agenda that we know nothing about. But as Christians, we can still override that because we have our faith, we have the Word of God, and I've just been really encouraged that people are praying and declaring Psalm 91. There's a day of prayer on Tuesday, just gone, I think, about it, a national or international one. People have been declaring then. I feel a lot more peace about it than I did. But in terms of changing our politics, I think we have to pray they're not going to overreact, because as we speak, there's a COBRA meeting chaired by Boris Johnson. What are they going to come out and declare? And the other issue is there is a kind of international pulling together in some ways, but also there's separations, because not everyone's agreeing with what President Trump has now said. But why are they reacting in this way to this virus when there's so many other deadly things going on in the world?
Well, I'm going to ask you, Robin, that possibly we are facing the biggest global threat since World War II. Certainly the biggest challenge to our all of our generations that we're living through right now. And I don't think there's anything so much has had a huge impact on our daily lives, from whether it's travelling to or meeting particular places. It seems like our plans and everything are being curtailed through this virus. So what is your thoughts on how the government is responding to the coronavirus, and is Boris doing enough?
I think, as Melanie says, there are things going on underneath the surface on all levels that we're not aware of, and maybe it's a good thing that we're not aware of them, because it might even engender more panic than is already evident in the general population. I think, personally, I think the government has not been as quick to respond to this as it should have been. And I know there's the whole issue of not wanting to panic people, but sometimes this general British reservation at moving too quickly plays against us, and I think in this situation it probably has. But the virus is here. We are not going to be able to stop it. I mean, that's clear from the way that it has been exponentially increasing its effect across the nation on a daily basis. So it depends now on what this COBRA meeting comes up with, as far as they're moving into what they call the delay stage, which means, as Simon is already saying, curtailing big gatherings of people, potential things closed down, schools, the lot. We just have to wait and see what comes from this meeting. But without a shadow of a doubt, it is going to radically affect the way that we live as individuals, as families, as communities, for some time to come, until there's some sense that it's either dying off or its effects are beginning to lessen. But as you and I were discussing in a previous program, it's still clear on a daily basis that the medics, the scientists that are researching this, don't fully understand how this virus works. They don't fully understand how it's spread. They don't fully understand how long it stays around, and they don't fully understand how long people retain the virus in their system, how long they're infectious for. So there are so many questions over this coronavirus that are as yet unanswered. I think it leaves probably politicians, policymakers floundering to know exactly how is best to respond.
And isn't one of the kind of great dangers with this virus is that we see, whether it's war, plagues, pestilence, that this can bring about political revolutions. Particularly is what we've seen across Europe, and particularly this may be why the Brexit is such a good thing for us, because we are not part of the Schengen Agreement, and the European Union have decided to still keep open the Schengen Agreement. So that means anyone can travel anywhere they want across Europe, apart from Austria, I think, who've actually banned anyone coming in from Italy. But that's not to say that even though the entire country of Italy has been essentially quarantined themselves and no one's able to move, that doesn't mean that those people, through freedom of travel, couldn't actually affect the rest of the continent of Europe. So this really does prove that Brexit is a good thing, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, I think Brexit's a good thing because I see it as a spiritual, not just a political issue. And sometimes people who don't like our newspaper say it's too political, but we're saying no, we're pro-Brexit because it's a spiritual issue and about the destiny of our nation. Yes, in terms of Brexit, yes, I think it's a good thing, but I think Brexit's a good thing also economically. I was at this Bruges Group conference on Saturday, and there was a top businessman, a property developer, saying that the EU is headed for the mother of all credit crunches, and that's another reason to get ourselves out quite cleanly as soon as possible. In terms of not being tied up to their regulations, I think that's also a very good idea, because in a situation like this, we want to be able to move quickly, and we want our precautions, our measures to be taken by British experts. I hope I'm not being sort of a little Englander here, but I'd rather it was our Prime Minister was able to make decisions quickly with top advice from our experts, and we have very good medical people, rather than going through some committee in Brussels and then waiting for someone who's an unelected president to make a decision. So in terms of being able to move quickly, I think it's also very good to be out of the European community. But the European Union, at the moment, we are still in. And at the moment, as far as I'm aware, we have fairly free movement.
Yes.
And people could still, you could have refugees seeking asylum from Iran right now. And we don't exactly know what's going on in Iran because, as you've highlighted, this could change politics because we have a democracy, whereas the other countries, China, Russia, Iran, they don't have democracies, and they can do what they like, and they can do what they like to their people.
Isn't there a great danger with this one? It's a question of we're looking for leadership from our government and our Prime Minister Boris Johnson regarding this one, and we're in a case where now it is now a pandemic, so it's a global problem. Should Boris Johnson be following kind of President Trump's lead now? And what he means is that he's stopping anyone flying in from the European Union. Should Britain be doing the same?
It may be a course of action that eventually the British government takes. We'll have to wait and see. But the difficulty is that the virus is already here and it's already spreading. So it's very much a case of, closing the stable door after the horse is bolted. And it's more a case of what the government and particularly the medical authorities here in the UK feel is necessary to try then and curtail the spread of the virus, which is already in all corners of the nation, including the Republic of Ireland, who as of half an hour ago have closed down their schools and several other things to do with their life. we're intricately linked in that sense with what goes on in the Republic of Ireland. So that our island nation has to cope with something that's already here. And shutting borders, okay, it might prevent people who are already infected coming in, but what difference does it make when the virus is already here? I mean, one of the leading experts, in inverted commas, on the World Health Organization has already come out this morning and said that what President Trump has done is a waste of time, because, and again, in the States, the virus is already there. So preventing people from traveling back and forward to Europe ends up being seen as a token gesture, because it's not going to prevent something that's already there.
Absolutely. Melanie, we don't know how long this virus is going to be the number one emergency crisis for the British government and governments throughout the world. We don't know how long this virus is going to last, but obviously its impact is kind of devastating. Do you think this really does, in a sense, also put to slow down the whole movements towards globalism? Because before, with freedom of travel, you could get on a plane, you could go to China, you could go to the United States, South America, anywhere around the world, but people now are not traveling. And so this also reinforce the need for kind of national borders rather than open global borders, as our big globalist institutions like to insist on?
Yes, I think it's two sides of the coin, because on the one hand, I agree with you, yes, there is that danger that people will be restricted, but it will be the ordinary people, the people who go on holiday to Spain or to Italy, or those of us who perhaps wanted to go to Israel for the San Remo celebration in April. It won't affect the people at the top. They'll carry on doing what they're doing. And my concern is that something like this could be serve as an excuse for, say, the UN to suddenly try and get a grip on things and say, right, you've all got to do this, quickly pass some resolution in the General Assembly. We all agree that you've all got to do this. That is, it's similar to the environment thing, because the environment crisis, so-called, is going along more slowly in comparison. But something like this is a threat in terms of a global government emerging, not immediately, we hope, but to in some form or other, to try and force its opinion. Absolutely.
I think we also have to look at the another aspect to this. I mean, you were making a comparison with World War II, and in an earlier program we were discussing the Spanish flu, which took millions of lives back at the end of World War I. But on both of those occasions, there was not the access to global media in the way that we have today. I mean, we could literally be sitting here discussing this with these things open in front of us, checking to see what the latest headlines are. That was not possible in 1945. And so actually, social media and 24/7 global media are actually feeding into or creating a feeding frenzy on this particular subject. And eventually, they'll move on to something else. I mean, a month ago, it was Brexit. Now it's the coronavirus. A while back, it was the Australian fires. The media is also part and parcel of creating the inverted commas, the climate that we're having to deal with and to face today. And, for right or for wrong, that's a harsh reality that we as believers in Jesus have to filter things through what the media is feeding to us. Is this truth? Is there another agenda? What does this say in comparison to what the Word of God says? And as Christians, if we don't do that, we're in danger then of being sucked into this mass movement that Melanie has alluded to.
But if we look at what's happening, I mean, having so many people saying that there are kind of winter flus that kill off a lot of people. But the fact is that this virus is spreading on a global speed. That's having a huge impact on people's lives, stopping their ability to carry out even work or going to schools or visiting friends or relatives. The implications for this in terms of global travel is having a huge implication. And we only have to look at the worst affected country across Europe, and that's Italy, and to realise then that the whole country of Italy is in shutdown. And that people are now only allowed to go to supermarkets or pharmacies. Everything else is shut down. So it shows us that not only are we living in incredibly troubling and dangerous times, but also shows us that maybe God is trying to actually speak to us all at this time by saying, because death is at the door and we're seeing so many people being killed by this deadly virus, it makes us think about what is important in our lives. What are our priorities? Where do we go after this world? And makes people think about questions that they probably haven't even thought of before. And then just brings that reality of death to realise that they are mortal and their life will come to an end. So isn't this, on the one hand, maybe God using this virus in order to bring people to a place of repentance? And at the end, this is the most important thing, is where we end up, our eternal destination, whether it's heaven or hell.
Well, I completely agree with that, and I pray that God uses this and brings opportunities out of it. And it's a great opportunity to talk to neighbours. I'm quite peaceful about this because I know where I'm going when I die. But I think in terms of, as you've already discussed earlier today, the numbers of people who are actually dying, it's not a huge amount. And Yet. But I think that the panic from the government is because they know it could be some kind of germ warfare. Although it's, in theory, the common cold, a variation of the common cold, that's what I've been told, and it goes in stages. That's what a Chinese survivor said. First it seemed like a cold, then it seemed like flu, then pneumonia, but he was a youngish man, so he got through it. It's that same process which does kill thousands of elderly every year through flu. And in the United States, where they record these things, it is 16,000 elderly people die a year from flu. And in terms of, as Christians, as Robin was saying, and what news is fashionable at the moment and what's not, perhaps God is not unhappy for this to get our attention, the rich, spoiled Western world, who will actually make a fuss about it, because no one's making a fuss about the 500 babies that Britain's killing a day, unborn babies. Because they can't say anything. They can't dominate social media. No one's making a fuss about the 35,000 children a day who die worldwide because they haven't got the right, healthy water or whatever, because they can't dominate social media. But as soon as it touches the rich Westerners, that's when it's taken seriously. The people who've got the money, the people who can influence votes, etc. So, yes, if God is, he can bring something out of this, something really positive. But I think we have to be very much aware as Christians of that it's not the end of the world, and there's been there's so much death and disaster going on already, the loss of innocent lives we're not aware of.
I think the reason why this is such a huge news story is that none of us have faced what we're seeing now in our lifetimes. Number one. Number two, this is affecting everybody's life, whether it's lifestyles, whether it's ability to travel, the ability to work, the unknown. And that's why it's a story that's affecting everyone. That's why, in the sense that the news has to dominate this one, because everything else seems absolutely insignificant in comparison to what we're actually facing. And this is the biggest challenge that the government is facing. And we're seeing there's different reactions from different governments in actually dealing with this crisis. And it is a major crisis because, it's an unknown entity. Like Robin was alluding to earlier in the programme. We don't know its full impact. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't really know, the impact this is going to have on our society, the impact it's going to have on our politics. I mean, they're even talking about now the possibility that, for example, that by handling cash, we could spread the coronavirus. So this could be an opportunity then to say, let's get rid of cash and live in a cashless society and go digital, which is completely right out of the book of Revelation 13. So, we all know that also with the US presidential elections coming up in November, and President Trump he needs those big political gatherings in order to generate and mobilize his support base. And if he can't do that and people can't that could have a huge impact on his election. So we're seeing that this virus that could have huge implications, not only for the society in which we're living in, but the way that we interact as human beings, but also in the way our society acts and the way that we're governed. And I think this is something that we have to be aware of, and this is something we have to be extremely vigilant about. And this is why we have to ensure that the government and all governments will now seek new powers, particularly those to quarantine people who have the virus to stop them spreading, who could face now 3 months prison sentence if they are found to escape from being quarantined. So the government is pushing through emergency measures, but there has to be that guarantee that, okay, we'll allow you to have those emergency measures and extra powers, as long as when this crisis has come back, you descend these powers. And that is the precarious world that we're living in now.
Yeah, you're right, yes. Melanie, was there something that you wanted to...
Well, one of our subscribers had wrote in to me and was just saying that every year millions die worldwide from influenza, but we don't see cities in lockdown, people being temperature checked at airports, people being asked to self-isolate, talk of schools being closed, events being held behind closed doors, or the Prime Minister calling a meeting of COBRA. And he said, why the hype over COVID-19? Who's behind it? No doubt the enemy, capitally the spiritual enemy, but who is he using? Russia? In all the facts and figures being thrown at us, every news broadcast about new cases, total number of infections, total number of deaths, etc., which country is largely absent? To bring a country to its knees, you don't need to resort to terrorist attacks, missiles, etc. All you need to do is cause worry, fear, panic, divert governments away from other important business, shut down or overload vital services, depress stock markets, deplete the workforce and disrupt connectivity.
Okay, so let's say we take one of your readers' letter there, and we take that completely at face value. If the government implemented that and say, well, this is just like any other flu, took no action, then the implications for our government and our society would be absolutely huge. And then we would probably be in a worse situation than Italy. So it's a responsibility of any government to protect their own citizens, to put measures in place, and particularly when we're getting medical evidence of this. And this, I think, is one of the great dangers that we face in this one, that our knowledge and how we respond to the coronavirus has to be based on facts. The moment we enter into the conspiracy theories, enter into that, and we don't get the facts, this is where we're in danger, because all the government as well also use this as an opportunity to clamp down on social media and people spreading wrong information about the coronavirus, and therefore we see a kind of freedom of thought and freedom of expression curtailed because of dangerous conspiracy theories. I mean, this is a real problem. And those particularly working in the health, our brave doctors and nurses fighting this, this is something serious and we have to deal with it.
And I think part of it also is the fact that we've had the SARS, we've had MERS, in previous years, the swine flu, but as a society, we've never, since 1939 to 45, we've never faced something that, as far as we're aware, has the potential to do such damage to the whole country. And therefore people are not used to responding to it. And what they do is respond in panic. And so again, the media, the government, they're all fighting this battle to try and keep things under control and not let it get out of control.
Absolutely. But the statistics look a bit reassuring, because a friend sent me some statistics which her son, a doctor, had sent today, saying that it's coronavirus is an unacceptably high risk in the 70 plus. They have about 10% mortality, which is probably similar to or better than a flu epidemic. They're also now saying it's high risk for the over 50s, although only 3%, I assume, high risk or mortality over all age ranges. So it's not like the bubonic plague. I think the panic possibly is due to people. It is, as Robin said, it's the unknown. And like you said, one doesn't know the long-term effects. I mean, we had Chernobyl, we had a nuclear explosion in Russia. What about all the winds saying that? Everyone, or increase in case of cancer, did anyone know about that? But they don't, if they actually...
We didn't have the social media and the 24/7 media playing into that at that point that we do now. And I'm not trying to blame the media, I'm just saying it is part, I mean, we're sitting in a studio discussing this, so the media is part of the ongoing unfolding of this story. And that can be a positive part or it can be a negative part. And it really depends on the sources that people are getting their information from, whether it's playing into their inbred or inbuilt fears and insecurities, or whether it's actually trying to just calm things down. As you say, this is like the flu, this is like the cold. Let's not go over the top here. The difficulty is we've already gone over the top. It is 24 news cycle. It's there. Every time you turn on the news, you open the daily paper or you check your mobile device, it's there in front of you. So it's learning to filter what we're imbibing from these sources. And as I said before, lining it up with what God's word says as believers, what we take on board.
I suppose the best example that we can look at, and as both of you, is that, it's a question of, let's use this as an opportunity to tell others about the good news of Jesus and the gospel, and to pray also for our government as well. Yeah. Pray that they would have wisdom. Pray for Matt Hancock, our health secretary, that God would give him a deeper understanding of how to deal with this crisis. Because, it's maybe at times of crisis that people actually come to faith. And if it wasn't for this virus, then maybe people wouldn't be thinking about what happens after this life and making those decisions that they wouldn't normally face. So maybe God is, in his kindness, giving us all, particularly in the West, another opportunity to turn back to him, because he's the only one that holds all the answers. What we should be seeing is days of national prayer and repentance being put on.
I think that's a very good point, because with the environment crisis, or so-called, people aren't turning to God. They think they can fix it themselves. You've even got Prince William saying we've got 10 years to save the world, whereas with this, people cannot control it. They're trying to, but it's all a defensive reaction. It's not something they can really meet head on.
We'll go down to about a minute and a half, so about a minute left. So, Robin, as Christians, how should we respond to the coronavirus?
Well, as you say, we need to take on board our responsibility to pray for our government, and we need to be aware of the needs of others in our fellowships, families, communities. And to be aware of the fact that actually this is something that God is allowing to happen. It's not happening all by itself.
Robin, Melanie, thank you so much for being my guest on Politics Today, and I want to thank you for watching today's programme. We shouldn't allow fear to come in our hearts as we are dealing with a crisis that we haven't really seen for over 80 years, and certainly haven't seen anything like this since the Spanish flu of 1919. So let's continue to pray, let's continue to look after one another, and let's continue to live in peace with Yeshua. So thank you for watching Politics Today.